Welcome to this week's episode of Lowdown on Low Code. Listen, just want to take a moment to thank everybody who's been joining the podcast. The numbers have been growing. We're so excited that you're getting value out of this. Would love it if you could help us get the word out. If you could subscribe and make some comments on the podcasts. That helps us get the word out to like-minded folks. So today we've got a great episode. It's a bit of a play date for me. I get to visit with an old friend from days gone by. So a quick introduction. I'm Rob Koplowitz. I actually got my start in enterprise software doing low code development in Lotus Notes, and then I went from there to IBM, from Lotus to IBM, a stint at Oracle, where I got to know today's guests, Microsoft, and then I spent quite a number of years with Forrester, covering things like digital process automation. I'm here with my co-host today, Ryan Duguid. How are you, Ryan?
Great to be back, Rob. It's interesting. You've collected the set of the mega vendors there. I feel like I'm well behind with just Microsoft under my belt at that point.
I like to say I've been thrown out of every great software company in the world.
Excellent. Well, it's great to be back, Rob. Obviously, I've been hanging out, traveling around the world a little bit, and like you and I discussed, it's a bit like the Triple X movies, right? I was there for the first one, and then I disappeared for the second one, and now I'm back for the third. So it's
no explanation.
It's fantastic.
Just in and out.
And Ashish, great to have you on board, and great to be able to talk to someone who's firmly on the product side of the business, and coming from a titan like Oracle, and one that I think we don't often hear about, that I think is not given as much credit as they should be in the low code space. So it's fantastic to have you here today. So just maybe by way of background, obviously Rob's worked with you a long time over the years, and you're 30 plus years in the industry overall. Obviously a lifer when you started at Oracle, and then you've taken a break, done seasons in some of the great companies like Salesforce and the likes, but you're back now, you're running Apex. And so just love to understand, what's your backstory? How did you come to low code? What was it that enticed you about taking on that challenge within Oracle? And over the period of time that you've been in this industry, what is it that you've seen changed?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's really great to reconnect with Rob. It's been a number of years since we worked together back at Oracle. We do miss you, Rob. But it was a great ride being with you over there. And great seeing you again, Ryan, as well. So thank you for, again, hosting this and inviting me to be part of this series. My background, I started my career in tech. I've been here you kind of talked about a number of years. It really seems like an old fogey now. But
someone called me a veteran the other day, and I was like, oh, geez.
The V word now, right?
Yep.
My career started as a product manager in a company called Trilogy that was based. I just graduated out of University of Texas at Austin, and I was very fortunate to find a company that was local. I loved living in Austin, and it was just an extension of college going to that particular company. Great company, really gave me a kind of great experience in being a product manager. How do you build a product from scratch? And in those days, my first interaction with low code, believe it or not, was this Visual Basic.
Yes.
So I'm not so sure we can call it low code, more like a declarative programming start on a client server basis. That's how old I am, actually.
Which means, like the one trick in Visual Basic is just on error, resume next. Yes. And everything's fine.
Yes. So, but what was really cool about that was you could really visualize your front end of the application, you can draw it, and then you can put logic behind it. So that kind of a declarative programming really caught my attention. We hadn't really learned that in university. We were doing more C programming, C++ in those times, object-oriented coding. But it was really fascinating how quickly you can prototype and build applications for your customers and for your company, for your business overall. From there, I progressively moved on to more enterprise scale technologies, to Java. My stint was after my couple of startups. It was actually with BEA systems. WebLogic servers. They really understood the realm of Java and the sophistication of the technology stack to build these mission critical systems. When you're running trading systems around the world, when you're running major e-commerce sites on this technology, you need to have a lot of capability in the backend platform to be able to support that at scale. But the downside was you required really, really advanced, sophisticated professional developers to do it right. So there's a lot of capability, but you have to learn a lot and you have to be really advanced to be able to build these amazing systems. And we continued with that at Oracle. From BA, I moved on to Oracle, and then we led the middleware stack over there. I was responsible for go-to-market for that, and got a really great experience with a lot of customers and how they were building solutions. And then I took on a different path in terms of going back to startups and so on. And again, the world had changed, with the cloud, with open source technology that's available out there. But one theme was consistent. You had to be an advanced developer to take advantage of all these capabilities. If you just had an idea and you didn't have really basic understanding of computer science or programming, it was difficult for you to convert that idea into reality. You need to either hire people or really depend on somebody else to be able to do it for you. So when I came back to Oracle, I was leading the charge for go-to-market for Oracle Cloud Platform. So again, all the core platform as a service offerings from Oracle. And in the middle of that, I discovered Apex. So there was this hidden gem inside the company that was not much talked about. Actually, my first stint at Oracle, I barely knew anything about Apex, I have to admit. And Apex had just been launched. In 2004 is when Apex really came out, but the first version of it. And then over the last 20 years, it's consistently been put lots of new capabilities and advanced a lot from what I first saw it at in 2004. But the reality was, it was really addressing a critical need of rapid application development by anybody who had an idea. I mean, that's the whole mission of it. And that really what caught my eye. And then 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to switch over from go-to-market into actually leading the product, especially leading product management and being the GM of this business. So I really took on that charter, and it's been a great ride. And it's really exciting to see what our customers are able to do with this capability out in the market. So hopefully that gives you some background about where I come from.
It's good. It's a good journey. It's like I'm talking to kindred spirit, right? Because I likewise, my first commercial project was Visual Basic. So it's interesting. And I was actually on a webinar the other day, and that was the conversation that came up. That was, to me, the sort of the early start of all this, right? Because exactly to your point, drag and drop a UI, create some forms, create some screens, and then wire up minimal code, right? And even the code itself was fairly rudimentary compared to C++, Java, C, things like that, right? So it's like a developer accelerator, if nothing else, but you could pull design-oriented people into it. And so it's it's interesting that I'm not the only one that came from that space. So
no, definitely not.
But yes, it's and also interesting. I think that, as you say, even within Oracle, it wasn't the most well-known part of the company, right? Because Oracle's known as the database, and it's known as Larry Ellison, and so it's it's fascinating now and a big part of what we would like to explore today is to understand sort of where it fits in the world. So maybe Rob, you want to dive into that.
Yeah, so I mean, just to maybe to double click really quickly on the Larry thing as part of this. I mean, there was always sort of the, honestly, it's an incredibly successful and sophisticated company, but there are certain signals that you could read from the market, which is if Larry's on stage at a keynote and he's talking about your product, then he's thinking about your product. Your product is important to the portfolio, and it doesn't go unnoticed that that Larry is Larry's talking about Apex on stage, which is a big commitment from a big company, at least sort of the tea leaves that I'm able to read with my past. So with that in mind, Ashish, look, low code spans a lot of stuff, right? We're going to go from anywhere from from an Airtable kind of smart sheet type of metaphor out through, we've had OutSystems, we've had Mendix, we've had Bizaji, we've had the more process focused folks with Appian and Pega on on the show, and a lot of these things cover a lot of waterfront, but there is sort of that sweet spot that you design for. So if I'm an Oracle account executive, I'm walking into meeting a prospect. What is it that I'm hearing? What is it I'm seeing that says, well, this is really what we're designed to do. This is our sweet spot. What is the ideal customer profile for Apex? What's the ideal situation that you're walking into?
Great question, Rob. I think what we notice as the number one use case for customers is customers that want to get more value out of the data. So today there's a new category of applications that are emerging called data-driven apps or data-centric apps, right? So you have a lot of data, and I want to get more information or be able to make more intelligent decisions based on this data sets that's residing in my organization, and I really don't know how to harness it right? So some customers are building things like fraud detection systems in the back end. There's a lot of data. I want to harness that data to detect fraud. Some people are doing it to build executive dashboards, for example, and where they're saying, okay, I want to know how my business is performing in real time, and I don't have the luxury to spend 3 to 6 months to build out these applications. I need it yesterday, right? So over there, and they don't have an army of developers. The other aspect of that is, one is data-centric applications, and secondly, they have limitations in terms of skill sets, or they don't have the right skill sets or personnel in place who can build these systems out for them. So that's a number one use case where customers are looking to get more value out of data. Second thing is customers that are actually looking to build especially our number one focus, I would say, is line of business. So you see a lot of activity in terms of Office of Finance or HR or sales or marketing, where these are organizations that have a real business need, but are completely dependent on IT till date to be able to provide the systems they need to run their departments. And what they're really looking to do is be able to rapidly leverage their core personnel. They could be business analysts, somewhat familiar with programming. Some of these departments do have their own IT organizations, like HR IT. There may be a few personnel there, or finance IT, they have a few personnel there. So that to us is a very ideal spot because they're coming in and they need to build real business solutions in very short amount of time with very few personnel. So low code is the ideal platform for them because now they can rapidly build this out without having the dependency on IT. They coordinate with IT because there is some shared security credentials. There are certain company policies and compliance that they do need to adhere to. But in general, they want to build these solutions out really quick and provide value to their business and value to the users overall. So we do see those are the big two ones. Right?
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Another one I would say that we do see a lot of is digital transformation initiatives, or I would say modernization of applications. So there's a lot of legacy systems out there in place for a lot of these companies, and they're looking to modernize them. So bring them to the cloud is a very common use case. Okay, how do I take an on-premises system that was built on legacy technology, doesn't really translate well into cloud, and doesn't really adhere to the architecture and the cloud-centric architecture of scalability and reliability. That kind of capabilities is what they're looking to do by modernizing with or transitioning that with Apex into this new environment. So those are some of the common use cases that we see our customers are adopting today with low code.
So Ashish, I'm picturing this meeting with Larry where he's like, tell me why we should care about this Apex thing. And it's like, well, you have all this data in your organization. And then he leans forward. And we have this way of taking that and getting it out to many more users and putting it out to many more use cases. And he says, oh, you had me at data. Hey, I want to actually follow up on your last comment a little bit, because I know that this is always an interesting dynamic and one that we feel is changing. So Oracle is a database company. Oracle is a low-code company. Oracle is a very, very large applications company. And there's always this tension of, should we build it? Should we buy it? Should we customize within the application? Should we customize outside of the application, which is a huge use case for low-code. Do you find instances where Apex is specifically being used to extend core Oracle applications into new use cases?
Absolutely. I think I'll tell you something more interesting. Oracle is the first company which is using low code to transform its own fleet of applications overall. So we started out with our industry specific applications, and they're adopting Apex to modernize those applications. We did a lot of acquisitions, to build out our industry stacks. As you know, Rob, when you were there, we were in the middle of a lot of acquisitions. At that time, I think it's like 80 plus acquisitions overall. And a lot of these applications are getting now replatformed or transitioned with Apex. So that is happening today. One of the biggest ones is Cerner. So we talked about that, and Larry talks about that pretty openly as well. Is we've taken Cerner, which is built on a different stack, and now they're using Apex to really transform that into a modern environment, cloud-based application. So that's a big one. Nobody in the industry has even dared to attempt such a large-scale enterprise application transformations with low code. Similar stuff now is happening on Fusion applications. So our next generation Fusion applications, a number of them are going to be built on Apex. We're getting retransformed with Apex. So again, these are your ERP systems, your general ledgers, your HR management systems, your CX systems. So all of these sophisticated systems, in the past, you could never even dream of using low code to build these systems out, let alone re-platform and transition them with this particular technology. So Oracle, definitely, we are pushing the envelope. And this is because Larry is a big believer in this particular platform. And I'll tell you how that happened as well. During the pandemic, we had built a system called vSafe. And in the first iteration of the system, we tried to do it with a different language, not Apex, like a high code system. And it just, because the requirements were changing on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, the rate of iterative change was so high that with high code, it was very difficult to keep up and to build out the right system. Also, this needed to scale. We didn't realize, we didn't know what the scale would need to be because, again, this is unprecedented times. So you could start out with a few hundred people, but it could go out to millions of people. So the environment had to be able to scale without any issue. And since this was a government mandated system, it had to be highly secure and compliant. So we actually came up in the middle of this, the Apex team came up and they said, well, we can do this with Apex in parallel. And they showed that to Larry. And then as he was dictating new requirements, we can make those changes in real time because we don't generate any code with Apex. It's all metadata driven in the back end. So the changes were implemented right away. You didn't have to have long change cycles. And we were able to build the system out based on those requirements in record time. And the system, actually, when we implemented this, scaled to about 10 million concurrent users, right? At the peak, it was 140 million total users. So not only could you build a mission critical system in record time, but now you could scale it to record number of users without having any disruption in service. That capability is what really impressed the team at Oracle, especially Larry. And that's when the light bulb went on. Like, why don't we use it to do all sorts of development? Why is it just limited to certain kinds of applications? Why don't we try to use this for everything that's being developed within Oracle? So that's kind of the mindset change that took place at that time. And now we're in the middle of the process of doing that.
It's a great North Star to have because I think, a lot of the discussions we've had to date and a lot of the sort of long running criticism in the low code world is it's for a class of applications, right? It's for less sophisticated things, less strategic things. Maybe scale's not such a big issue. And it's fantastic to have you, highlight an application like that, right? Because that kind of scale and there are vendors who can deal with that. And there are certainly vendors who can't. Rob, to your point, like you go down to something like Airtables and Smartsheets and Mondays, they just weren't designed for that kind of concurrent load. Yeah. So there's definitely characteristics, but it's, the product manager in me thinks it's super interesting because in your position, this is the best way to get a really compelling roadmap in place, because once people start using your tool internally to build real scale things, you pretty rapidly find all the stuff you're missing in the product. And then they come down the hallway and start telling you about it. We used to have this at Nintex when our internal team would build things and they'd be like knocking on my door going, hey, we've got some requests for you. Yeah, okay. Better get busy dealing with that. So it's good. So interesting. I mean, this is a really fascinating direction, right? Because I think, whenever I think Apex and whenever I think Oracle, it tends to be there. And, Rob, you did IBM as well. There are red customers, there are blue customers, there are, Microsoft's blue, yellow, green, and red customers and what have you. And people tend to orient towards a stack, right? And what's interesting with something like, say, Microsoft and the Power Platform is a lot of people will just say, well, I've already got it, so I may as well use it. So it's interesting. IDC, my good friend Maureen Fleming, she was the first one that ever used to poke me around Apex and what you're up to over there. IDC back in 2022 say Oracle's the most deployed low code platform out there. And I remember when I heard that statistic, I was like, what? Like, that's just, it's not kind of how I thought about the world. But you've got back then 2 million plus apps, 2,000 apps being created a day. You've got obviously a massive deployed base of passionate Oracle consultants, experts, that kind of thing. But so as Oracle, is Apex just for Oracle customers? Is it for other people? And if you had to pick, sort of, you've given us a couple of examples, but the use case that you would say just would never have happened, not even a use case, but a real customer example, something that would never have been built without the people having access to this technology. Like, what's your take on that?
Sure, yeah, no, I think great question. So I think first of all, I think there is a big myth that Apex is only for Oracle customers, right? And in general, anytime Oracle releases a technology, they tie it to the Oracle stack and they say, okay, this is only for Oracle. But that's not the case. When we build this platform, it's designed for anybody to use. And what really changed, I would say, is the cloud offering. So once it was on premises, yes, there is this notion, you need the Oracle stack underneath it to really be able to operate this. But once it's in the cloud, you don't really care what's in the back end. It's a service. Yep. All you got to do is provision it, and then you're ready to go. A great example of this I'll give is Siemens. So Siemens Mobility. And as you know, Siemens owns Mendix.
Yeah, I was going to say
one of our competitors in the space. And a lot of people associate Mendix, as a leader in the low-code space. But Siemens decided to go with Oracle, Apex, especially Siemens Mobility is the division of Siemens. And these Siemens Mobility, they build transportation systems around the world. So they'll build the metros in different cities around the world. Mm-hmm. And what they were looking to do, and their main application provider in the backend is SAP. As you can imagine, the ERP system is SAP. And then they have Snowflake for data warehousing. They have some Oracle. They have everything, right? They have IBM. They have a lot of custom systems. They have I think 14 different systems that they were managing to basically create this project management environment. So with all this massive number of projects going on around the world for Siemens Mobility, what they really didn't have was one unified application that can give them visibility into all these different projects, their inventories. Are these projects on track? So they needed a comprehensive project management platform to really have control over all these different environments. And they built a custom one using Apex with just 3 developers and in under 3 months. So the system basically ran in the cloud, integrates with 14 different environments in the backend, including SAP, Snowflake, IBM, Oracle systems, and so on, custom environments. And now, for the first time, they have complete visibility through this project management platform into what's happening in individual projects around the world. What does the inventory level look like? What does the supply chain looks like? What does the personnel requirements look like? Are they over budget? Are they under budget? Are they going to hit these timelines, right? So you can imagine the sophistication required across all these different projects that they're running in parallel, and now having to have a control and visibility on that using this system that they build using it. So that's a great example of an environment where you didn't really have a dependency on anything on Oracle. It's a completely heterogeneous system.
I think it's I was going to say you mentioned earlier this concept of the data-centric application, and I think analysis.tech, we're always pontificating about the true nature of the landscape, right? And trying to figure out, is there a quadrant thing? Is there a multi-dimensional thing we can use to describe, the vendor, what they're best suited for, what types of person, all this kind of thing. And the simplest model I always came up with was process-centric, data-centric, and form-centric, right? And then there's scale things and bits and pieces, but this is a great example of that, right? Where it's like, there's all this stuff, and you probably have systems that can tell you about one part and another part and another part and different teams if they actually got together. And you're talking about that umbrella view of what's happening with what's arguably a massive infrastructure project, right? Like a worldwide infrastructure project.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can imagine the criticality of that, right? So how important it is to get. They were using spreadsheets. I mean, even today, spreadsheets are used everywhere, as you know, right? So, our mission is to eliminate that as well. So another great example I'll give you is a company in Japan called Nomura Research Institute, and they are the largest systems integrator in Japan. So, and this company runs the Tokyo Stock Exchange, and they happen to run it on the Oracle Cloud, but that's a different story another time. But but what they were doing was they have a massive army of developers, right? Consultants that actually go and implement different solutions. But they were looking to basically develop a practice around low code. And they evaluated 20 different vendors in terms of before they selected Apex as the strategic platform of choice. And one of the things that they did to test it out, or how they came to that conclusion, was they did a pilot to say, which one of these systems, through which one of these systems can I build a replica of Instagram in a matter of a couple of days with my developers who have no knowledge of any of these platforms, right? So with Apex, they were able to literally, they called it a demogram. It's a very interesting story, right? So they built a social media app, and they were able to do that in like less than 3 days of these with 2 developers and coming in, and they were able to kind of just use the platform and replicate, not everything. I mean, I don't want to get Mark Zuckerberg all upset that they replicated Instagram in 3 days.
The 80-20 rule, right? Got the best part of it. Yep.
Exactly. The basic capabilities of this, they were able to really recreate that with ease. And then they showed that to their executive team to say, look, how easy it is to build this. And it's a completely different kind of application. This is not a data-centric application, for example, right? But it's more UI-centric. It's got social features to it. But they were able to build all that stuff with ease and retain that on their own without having any help from Oracle. So that's the kind of power of some examples I can give you in terms of how broadly applicable this platform is to solve any kind of a use case you might envision now with this low-code capabilities.
So these are the interesting things, some pretty heavy lifting applications, right? And even, social as opposed to data-centric. What's one of the interesting things to think about low-code is sheer breadth, right? So oftentimes there's this, I always like to talk about, like you're describing things that I would call the engine of an organization, especially a Siemens example. And I always like to talk about the oil in the engine, right? It's the operational processes every day. And you mentioned spreadsheets. So at the other end of the spectrum, what's the sort of the simplest, most trivial thing you've seen, right? That where people maybe might have said, well, Excel's okay for that, or I'll go to Google Sheets for that, or I'll use Airtable. And you would say, no, but you can use Apex for that too. Where would you say the cutoff point is with that?
Yeah, I think it's a great one. Anytime, and I think Excel is great. By the way, Excel is a great tool. I use it all the time too. So, but anytime you have to collaborate, you have to share data, right, through Excel, it can become very challenging because now you have to worry about version control, people changing data within the cells. Security becomes an issue. Access becomes an issue because if you have a spreadsheet, even though you may have it password protected, the password gets shared, it can become a little bit of a nightmare of managing this. And we've seen that across everything. We've seen like large banks, for example, one of the largest banks in Europe, they came to us and said, look, we are heavily dependent on spreadsheets and we want to get off of it. We have 10,000 spreadsheets that we have to manage today, and that's becoming a nightmare. So it's a compliance nightmare, it's a security nightmare. It's usability nightmare. So can you help us automate this and get us off of it, right? So that's a very common use case. And we see that in a number of organizations where there's heavy reliance on spreadsheets, but they want to convert that into applications and collaborative applications, right?
Yeah.
So that we see a lot. We see it not just in large companies, we see it actually in startups. So there is a nonprofit called Letters Against Isolation. It's a very, very interesting use case, and I always think this is a really noble cause, and it really caught my heart with this. These two young ladies started this out of high school they realized that there are a lot of seniors who are lonely. They don't have anybody to communicate with. And so they started writing letters out of just having a connection with the senior citizens. And it just started out with they started with their grandparents, grandma, I think. And then they said, okay, there are other people out there, seniors out there who may be in the same state. So they started writing letters to them. And soon this caught on and has become a movement. Now I think they have like 15 to 20,000 volunteers who are now in part of this organizations worldwide who are doing this. And they were pretty much managing all of this, right? Because you have to have a track to say, okay, who wrote the letter? Who was the letter sent to? Who is the volunteer? And then I'm sure there's some churn in there as well, right? Some people volunteer at a certain time. So they were managing all of this in spreadsheets, and I think they moved to Google Docs to do this. And then they realized that wasn't really supporting their needs, and they used Apex. We have a free version of Apex. It's called always free version of Apex. So anybody can come and sign up, and they can always use it. There's some limitations. There's 20 gigabytes of space with 2 eCPUs of free access in terms of compute. So enough to get your basic application up and running. So they started with that, and they found a marked difference in terms of the capabilities to say how much easier it was to build it with Apex and to sustain that organization and operations using that. And that was simply, I would say, a spreadsheet replacement to start out with, and has now grown into much more. So it's a great example of somebody who had no knowledge of the platform, started with spreadsheets, and has now transitioned into a code application.
So that was great, Ashish. Thank you so much. By the way, the organization with 10,000 spreadsheets. I think Fred has 10,000 spreadsheets on his laptop. So that's a wild underestimation of what's going on in the organization. The other thing I would say about spreadsheets and just specifically is when you move things to a managed platform, they're not only collaborative. They're able to participate in broader processes, right? So when these spreadsheets pop up in the middle of your processes, particularly if they're customer facing, these always represent manual wait states. So that's always been kind of the enemy out there. But let's shift gears a little bit, right? So I know that obviously Oracle is making massive investments in AI. I follow Miranda Nash, our old friend Miranda Nash. She's doing really cool stuff. Ashish, could you get us sort of calibrated as to how this stuff is being consumed within Apex here in the short term, and then maybe kind of give us a sense of how this is going to manifest itself in the long term, kind of the out beyond the headlights? What can we expect from Oracle and AI in this space?
Sure, absolutely, Rob. I think AI, you can't have a conversation with a customer today without actually talking about AI, right? Anybody, actually, not just customer. It's the hottest technology, and it is really transformative. So it's not just all hype. It's actually, there's a lot of reality to it. And I can share a couple of examples as well in terms of where our customers are really pushing the limits on AI and low code. In our case, we have a three-pronged approach to AI from a low-code perspective. I wouldn't talk from a corporate perspective, just from the low-code perspective. One is we're the only, I would say, an autonomous low-code service running on an AI-powered infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? That means that we run on an autonomous infrastructure where the infrastructure really takes care of all the operations. So it takes care of your upgrades, your backups, your patching, your tuning, all the things that you would either need a very advanced DBA or very sophisticated DevOps personnel to do. Now this can be now automated, and now all you need to focus on is just provisioning the service and then just building your application. So we kind of taken away a lot of the pain of day-to-day management of the infrastructure and the service for you. The second aspect of it is we do enable you to do AI-assisted development. So I know a lot of vendors are moving in this space as well. But what we've really done is we've incorporated AI natively inside the platform for you as a user of the platform or as a developer of applications on this platform. Now you have a great assistant, which is going to actually accelerate or support you in your development journey. So now you can simply converse with it in natural language. It'll auto-generate SQL for you in the back end. As simple as that. So if you're not familiar with SQL and you just want to run some queries, all you got to define in plain English or any other language. Actually, we have a customer in Japanese, not just NRI, but other customer in Japan, that we just basically type in Japanese and it just was able to spit out the SQL query for you, relevant SQL query for you for that particular prompt. In addition to that, we've taken a step further to say, can you create an entire application by just natural language? So again, we have natural language prompts. You define the requirements for your application, so what we call the app generator or app creator, where you come in and you just type that in and it creates an entire blueprint from the data structures all the way up to the UX for your application, the full-blown application that now you can further customize and tweak for your requirements. So again, accelerating, compressing that application development journey for you to give you a great starting point from it. Now, does it do everything you need it to do? I think it's early days, so it gets you about, let's say, 80% there, 70 to 80% there, and about 20 to 30% you got to still build on top of it. Right? And it's only going to get better. So that part of what we call AI assisted development is just, I think we're in the very early stages of that, and we're adding more and more capabilities there. The third pillar is what we say is enabling you to create AI-powered apps. So what do we mean by that? Not only can you use AI in your application development journey, but now we have a lot of AI services, a whole set of AI services that you can easily integrate or plug into your core application so that your end users can now engage with them with ease. So it could be Gen AI services in the backend. It could be other AI services like AI vision. So if you want to scan through your images, and want to have some AI to kind of tag images or sort through images or identify objects in images, for example, that's a great service for you. You have speech. So you want to basically convert voice into text or kind of go through text and scan through text. You can do all those kind of capabilities now. We have this thing called document understanding, where you can upload documents and it can scan through your documents and parse through them for relevant pieces of information or whatever you need to be done on top of these documents, for example. So we have a number of these services that we made it very easy for you to plug and play as part of your applications to create what we call AI-powered apps. So those are kind of our three pillars of how we have incorporated AI, and we continue to advance on that in our subsequent roadmap and releases.
That's great. Thank you, Ashish. Ryan, can you take us home?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It's always interesting when I get a clearly articulated strategy like that, because the danger with AI is where everyone's could do this, and to get down to your three pillars. And I like what's fascinating to me in the world of low code is I always look at who has to administer this platform, which I think in the larger platforms like Apex is all the more relevant. Who has to build the applications every day for the end consumer, and then how does the user of the application benefit and leverage the technology? So it's really good to see like a nice clear strategy like that. So look, really appreciate you coming on, Ashish, and giving us a perspective that I think oftentimes not a lot of people hear about in the low code sector. And it's great to get a bit of an update on where everything's headed. So just a couple of questions. One, obviously, how do people get hold of you? You're fairly prolific out there in terms of the YouTubes and the LinkedIns and the like. So what's the best way for people to find you? How can people help you and Oracle on this journey? And then just the last part, and I love a vendor that gives a good free offering. How do people find that free version of Apex and get up and running, get started?
Sure, yeah. Let's start with the first one. To get hold of me, best thing is LinkedIn. So I'm my name, Ashish Mohindroo. Just look it up. And just I'll be happy to connect with you. And I'm pretty present on it. So if you have any questions, feel free to DM me, and I'll be happy to kind of respond in real time. In terms of how does somebody get hold of, get access to Apex? So we have a site called apex.oracle.com. So you can simply go in there, sign up for a new account. No credit card required. It's perpetually free. So you can kick the tires with it, and we have our latest releases there. So if you want to get the latest and greatest capabilities of Apex, highly recommend you go in there. We have, like I said, 21 million plus apps built on Apex to date, and we have a very big developer community of 850,000 plus Apex developers around the world. So and that is growing at an exponential rate. So I can tell you that it's a great ecosystem and a peer group that is very eager to support each other as well. So they're very active and very responsive. If you have any questions regarding the technology and you want to get a perspective from a different developer outside of Oracle, fantastic forum to be part of that. And you can get all of that once you go to apex.oracle.com.
Fantastic.
And then Ryan, I'm sorry, I missed one of your questions. Could you?
Yeah, how do people help you on the journey? How can they provide input, feedback, that type of thing?
Absolutely. I think we have a fantastic forum and an ideas app as well that is actually on apex.oracle.com. So we'd love for you to try the technology, provide us your feedback. If you have new ideas, great format of, to kind of go in and submit your ideas. We actually, with every release, we convert those ideas into actual features. So in the last release, I think we had over like 40 plus ideas that were converted into capabilities into our new release. So we do take this very seriously. We're not just looking at input from our own product managers and developers within Oracle, but we're actually looking at the community to really engage and give us guidance of where they want to take the platform. And I think that's a big reason we have such a big, vibrant community, because they do feel engaged and they feel that they're part of this particular journey that we're taking with Apex.
Awesome. Well, look, really appreciate you coming on today. And Rob, it's great to be back. Great to catch up with you again. And look forward to seeing everyone on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
All right.